In our training arc, we have to have a main protagonist. And here's the thing though. If we live our lives like we are the protagonists, doesn't that also mean other people are protagonists in their own life? Many anime villains, many comic book villains, simply fail this test. They are the main characters in their story, but they fail to take into account that other people are main characters in their own lives, and the best way to coexist in this multi-character protagonist series is to cooperate, is to listen, is to ultimately form a bond, which is like one of the biggest themes around anime of all time, right? Uh, while there are multiple good examples of a protagonist who really, really, really likes to see things from other people's perspective, I think two people really are excellent examples of this. Number one is, needless to say, Uzumaki Naruto. And Naruto is so important as a protagonist because I didn't really pick this up on my first read of Naruto. But on the second reading of Naruto, what I really appreciated about the character and the work in general is that there's a lot of Buddhist undertones in Naruto, and specifically, there's a lot of emphasis on Zen Buddhism, especially because Japan is a Zen Buddhism kind of a culture, right? So you will notice that when Naruto goes through his training arcs, he has a lot of breakthroughs related to Zen Buddhism philosophy. And if you look at the the Sennin mode, right, where one clone copy is in meditation and one clone copy is doing the thing, right? So that is like sitting in meditation in that particular pose is like a remnant of, it's like a evidence of Zen Buddhism influences. But what's more important about, for the purposes of this video, what makes Naruto such a good example of a protagonist who recognizes that other people are protagonists in their own right is how Naruto stubbornly, almost to a fault, does the talk no jujitsu, right? This is a very big complaint about Naruto. Like, oh, he's just talking, and then now all the fights are over. But you get to understand when you look at the grand context of Naruto. All the fights happen because nobody is willing to yield. But the thing is, when there's a lot at stake, who is willing to take the big L? In the grand story arc of Naruto, there are always people who backstab. There are always people who, try to do covert things, especially because it's a ninja comic. They try to sneakily get the gains through political means, and this is highlighted in the latter chapters, right? But nobody is outright saying, you know what? You can take anything you want, and I will give up the things that I hold valuable to my heart. Because if nobody sacrifices, there can be no peace. And what Naruto really understands is, he understands that this fight that we are having right now, it's not an isolated thing between you and me. This fight is exactly because our forefathers had this exact fight and nobody yielded. So somebody had to be submitted. And Naruto, the more his journey continues, the more he understands, holy fucking shit. Like, this is just history repeating itself over and over and over and over again. So, in Naruto, there are some forefathers who gladly gave up what they needed, right? Like Hashirama, the founder of the Leaf Village. He did the same thing. But ultimately, his villagers, right? There are some people who give up, but it's just one individual. And the village does not follow and adhere to that vision of collective peace is more important than individual victory. But Naruto has, and this is emphasized multiple times in the work, he has a way of moving people's hearts, right? Because he's so sincere and he knows what it's like to be ostracized, what it's like to have everything taken away from you. So, in fact, that's sort of a character trait by Naruto. Because he has nothing to lose already, everything he gained, it came from nothing. So his entire mindset is, if I can get it once, I can get it again. And of course, it stings. Of course, it hurts. And there are some things that he is not going to compromise on, like the relationship with Sasuke. But the important thing is, the reason why, if Naruto is to not budge, it is to reinforce his philosophy that the collective good is better than the individual victory. And although his at first his immaturity, his fights are focused on individual victory, the more he goes on and the more he realizes that in the grand scheme of things, collective peace is more important. Therefore, it's not just the enemy and me agreeing with one another. It's that our villagers have to come in agreement with this philosophy as well. So, that's why I think Naruto is such a good example of continuously changing perspectives. Because why? From their point of view, if I'm this frustrated, then of course wouldn't they also be really frustrated? If I'm really this willing to not lose anything, won't they have the same feeling? Naruto understands exactly that, and he is willing to give up the fight that systematically enforces that power dynamic. And I think that's why he's such a great example. The second example is Kamado Tanjiro from Demon Slayer. So Tanjiro is one of a kind good guy, right? There, he's so genuinely good. He doesn't really have a bad bone in his body, and I don't know if you know this, but Demon Slayer is also very, 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 very heavily influenced by Buddhism. But if Naruto is influenced by Zen, Demon Slayer is actually more focused on the Pure Land Buddhism. So the Amitabha, the branch of Buddhism that looks at that Amitabha Buddha. And I think Tanjiro being a good guy and understanding his teammates is very important. So he always lets his, very quirky teammates win, right? He understands Inosuke is very competitive by nature, so he will gladly have Inosuke have some wins so that they can grow together, so that they can progress together. In one of the training arcs, he realizes that Inosuke is feeling really down because he has a pretty high pride of himself, but he seemed to get some details. So Tanjiro boosts him so that he can move forward together with him by gladly taking some L's for the sake of Inosuke. And with Zenitsu too, right? Zenitsu is a chicken, and Zenitsu is but he's kind of a simpleton. He can get very provoked if you just touch him in the right buttons. So Tanjiro does exactly that, right? He is very encouraged by collective growth. And needless to say, Nezuko is the reason for all his journey is his very own sister, and so the ties of family are important. But even when he is killing demons, right? He understands the tie, especially in the fight with Gyutaro and Daki. He understands that the tie of a sibling you can't blasphemize that. You can't be sacrilegious to that sacred bond between a brother and a sister. And so even when they had a fight to the death, he prays so that they can rest in peace, right? So what I'm trying to say is Tanjiro is just a really, really great guy. But he cannot forgive. He cannot forgive Muzan. And in his fight with the Tengu, Han Tengu, he also, that's when where he truly activates the burn marks, right? And the important thing in the two fights where Tanjiro shows absolutely no mercy is when the villain is precisely thinking that they are the center of the universe. And therefore, when he utilizes the life of others for his own benefit without any remorse, he just says it outright, right? Mulan, you are a creature that should not exist. And this is a very fundamentally Buddhist kind of thought, minus the extreme like violence of like cutting through demons. But I think partly the reason why Demon Slayer doesn't pit people against people, especially for Tanjiro in Tanjiro's story arc, traditionally, right, in the past, people quarreled with amongst people. But the reason why Demon Slayer is more about demon versus human is it makes that contrast between what is the humanhood that we humans should strive for, and when we abandon that, how do we progressively turn into a demon, right? That's the core topic of Demon Slayer. And so, while Tanjiro and Naruto are both, about gladly taking losses for other people, Tanjiro is more punishing towards those who are not. And like, any in Buddhism influenced by Mahayana Buddhism, there needs to be a consequence for engaging in killing. There needs to be a consequence for violent actions, right? So I think this is where the author again gives Tanjiro a little bit of a grace, because the whole concept behind beheading demons is that that is what severs their tie with the real world, and that's what sends them to the afterlife. So while Tanjiro is engaging in the punishment, he does not have any negative consequences to deal with, because he is doing the duty of punishing those who contribute to a world where it's filled with demons. And what makes a demon? It's simple. When you lose sight of the fact that when you are important, everybody else is important. Therefore, if you use somebody else for your own benefit, that's an unforgivable thing, especially when it costs lives. So, through the art of peace and fight, today we talked about the dimension of, in the training arc, we are a protagonist. But what makes a protagonist? And also, what if everybody is a protagonist of their own? How do we live in a world where everybody is as much of a protagonist as I am?